If you like this podcast, share it with your friends. You can follow us on social media either on Facebook or on Twitter at cleverramblings. If you have any feedback or comments, please mail us at cleverramblings@gmail.com or visit our website cleverramblings.weebly.com. As always, we really appreciate you listening, and now enjoy today's podcast. Welcome everyone, this is the Clever Ramblings podcast. I'm Em.
And my name is Ivan.
And today we're gonna talk about three topics. First we're gonna start with, should more drugs be legal nowadays? Then we continue is, does the prestige of your school matter and for your future career path in particular? And then we're gonna close with, what are the biggest challenges humanity faces nowadays in our opinion? So let's start with, should more drugs be legal nowadays? Because, of course, more and more, especially like in Canada recently, weed was legalized and more countries thinking about this. And so I think this is like an important topic nowadays. And I think you might be interested in what we both think about drugs, if they should be more legal. So.
That was a very confident statement. You're assuming everyone gives a shit about what we got to
Well,
say.
they listen to it, so they have to kind of care. At least the few listeners we have on a regular basis, they should be interested in what we think.
Yeah, to the 10 people, we really love you. You know, y'all are amazing. We went from 80 to 10. We are so trash.
Well, the hype train just to get down. We have to get more regular episodes out there, and then the number's gonna increase again. Oh, we'll I hope so.
We'll just be forever in obscurity. It'll just be me and you listening to the podcast.
Well, and our moms. Never forget our moms.
Your mom doesn't listen to it anymore.
No,
remember?
She doesn't. That's sad.
Yeah, that is so sad.
I think at least my sister does, but yeah. Whatever. So, way off topic, but... So what do you think? Should more drugs be made legal? And if so, which kind of drugs? Because, of course, there's a broad variety of different drugs.
Well, I mean, I would say definitely. So wait, in Canada, they've legalized it everywhere in Canada?
Yeah.
For recreational use?
For recreational use, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But, wow, that's okay. That's cool. I mean, but for me, I think definitely weed should be legalized.
Yeah.
I think someone did a large meta-analysis on marijuana usage. I would say we will link it in the description, but I'm not sure I'll be able to find it. But it's a very long paper. Apparently they analyzed like 26,000 papers on marijuana. And basically, so I'll just sum up like the results. And you could just Google it if you want to find it. But basically they found is that in most cases, the results were kind of inconclusive, right? So if you say, like, for example, weed doesn't necessarily make you happier, so that's a common sort of belief that weed makes you happier. They didn't find that it makes you happier, so it's kind of like doesn't really make a difference on your happiness. They definitely found that I think it does help with pain, which we know. That's why it's allowed in most places for medical purposes. But it basically, in every single statistic every single category that they analyzed, it basically there was no major negative consequences of weed consumption or usage. Except for, like, if you're already prone to paranoia, then it tends to increase that. So if you're a paranoid person, you probably should stay away from weed. It's the same with it, like you're schizophrenic or something like if you already kind of have these predispositions, you should not do not do weed. But for most cases, either it had beneficial effects or inconclusive effects. And I think it was the same even for, like, is weed like cause, like, cause you smoke it and then it, like, you say, well, it can cause cancer. I think that was even inconclusive. So not even sure whether it's carcinogenic. So we don't really know. But basically, like, for a long time, we know that weed it's not been a problem. and also that we see that a big meta-analysis shows the same thing. So I would definitely say weed. As far as like other drugs such as cocaine, and ecstasy and LSD and all these, I mean, one problem with things, especially like LSD, I went to a talk in Oxford maybe 6 months ago, and even though I know some of my colleagues, like, they didn't like the talk because they said, well, he's not really asking the right questions, blah, 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 like all this type of, they had a lot of criticisms. But I would say that LSD, for me specifically, has been, censored. Like, research on that has been censored a lot. And so we don't really know what it does and how beneficial it is or how negative it is. So even if you do like a study that you think is not necessarily answering a lot of questions, I think it's still at the beginning stage of even understanding what's going on, let alone the mechanisms and how well. It's not as advanced as, say, like marijuana would be or some other things. So I think the jury is kind of still out on that. But I think really I believe that people should be able to do whatever drugs that they want to do in a sense that it doesn't hurt other people.
Yeah, exactly. I think you bring up a good point, yeah.
Right? Like, I don't care if a person is snorting cocaine. Like, you know what I mean? As long as they're not as long as, for example, if, I think even cocaine in small dosages is not necessarily unless you're prone to addiction, it's not necessarily going to destroy you.
Yeah, there's such a thing called microdosing. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, a lot of people do just to, be good at work or keep motivated during studying just to keep them going, but they're not addicted. And I think that's a big point is as long as you don't harm anybody, you can put in your body whatever you want. And it's kind of ridiculous that things that don't harm anybody are forbidden, that you can't take whatever, smoke weed or something that doesn't hurt anybody, while other things like alcohol or tobacco are totally legal. And I don't think, maybe there are studies on it, I'm not familiar with that, but beneficial effects of alcohol, I don't know. I just know that if you're at the mid-50s, I think one glass of wine or something like that is beneficial to your heart health. But overall, I don't think there are many studies that suggest that alcohol consume is good for you. So I don't know why alcohol is legal while other substances aren't. And it doesn't, and even if you compare the effects, for example, of weed and alcohol, a lot of people just get aggressive when they consume alcohol, they commit crimes and shit. And with weed, it's not that a lot of people get aggressive. And also, people bring up, but they then drive under the influence or whatever, but you have to regulate it the same way as alcohol. If you bring other people in danger, then it's not okay anymore. But as long as you don't, I think it's totally fine, especially with all the other shit that goes on then if you make it illegal. Just look at Mexico, Colombia, all the shit that is going down. It's drug related because it's illegal there. It's illegal to consume drugs, so it's going on the black market. And there, of course, is violence and the money that is so important for the drug trafficking. All of that shit is just going down underground. And that's so bad when you take the drugs and make them legal. For example, back in the day, when alcohol, the prohibition was illegal, everything, all that shit was done in the black markets, violence and everything. I think Al Capone was a big player during the prohibition with alcohol, trafficking and shit. So I'm not certain about that, but I think it was. And as soon as you made alcohol legal again, all the shit went away. You don't hear about anything
much crime
related to alcohol.
I think they did the same thing in another European country. I think maybe Norway or Finland or something, where they decriminalized a lot of stuff. It was one of the European countries. They decriminalized a lot of stuff, and they found that actually addiction went down. A lot of crime went down because what they did is if you had addiction, instead of throwing you in prison like they do in the States, they just was oh man, your life sucks and we should help you.
Yeah.
Which is oh my god, eureka moment. We should, if you have an addiction, maybe it's not that you're a bad person. It just means that, you going through something.
Yeah, and why ruin people's lives over that? I don't want to know how many people's lives got ruined just because they smoked weed once or they got caught with a little bit of cocaine or something. They didn't do any harm to anyone, but probably if some employer reads that he was caught with, I don't know, a little bit of cocaine, they'd be like, no, he's not responsible, we're not gonna employ him. Well, maybe he's a great worker, and just in his free time to get his mind off, like you taking a drink of whiskey or anything or something like that, he just smokes weed or something. So I don't know. I just
right.
find
I think it's.
concept.
I mean, as far as the criminalization of weed and things like crack, I mean, I think a lot of those are more tied to racial prejudice. Because, for example, especially in like black communities where a lot of people smoke weed, or I think Obama changed this. Where it used to be that cocaine and crack, which is basically the same thing, only crack is cheaper to make than cocaine. Cocaine is like a rich drug, so typically it would be taken by, middle to upper middle class white people. Whereas opposed to crack, you can kind of cook it and make it yourself. And it was cheap, so mainly like minorities would use that. And it used to be that for the same amount of crack, you would get more time. It used to be the laws were you would get more time in prison for crack than you would cocaine. And this was in law. And they were both kind of the same substance. The only difference is that one was used primarily by minorities and one was used primarily during by white people.
Yeah.
And you could, I don't think that's a coincidence, because I don't think a lot of things in the States are a coincidence like that. But as far as like, I don't know, I think, and I also, like you said, I think also like the government, it doesn't make any sense. Like the states could be making, I mean, even though like we're now legalizing more stuff, like at least in more states, like they could have been capitalized on this, right? Like they could have been made a lot more money off of drugs, because you gotta think, most people, like say you get weed from an illegal source, say if you get weed from a legal source, right? You're paying X amount of dollars for this, right? If all of a sudden the government takes control over it, I don't think all of a sudden you're gonna stop buying weed. And then also people who may not smoke because it's illegal might start smoking. So either way, you're going to get money for it. And then you could even employ the people who are drug dealers, because they obviously know no, seriously, you could, because, for example, what does the drug dealer know that the government doesn't? They know the area, they know the people, or the client, like what we call like the clientele, right? They know the landscape, they know how to distribute it, they know like the logistical details of how to get drugs and stuff like that. So in a way, and if it's a job, you could eliminate a lot of those turf wars, like battling over territory. So you would eliminate a lot of that drug-related violence. Because if you have a job and I have a job, and we're both making salary based off of this, and we can make a living, there's no reason for me to say, oh, you're on my territory, because now I can't make the money that I want to make, so then one person kills the other person. And it gets, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this, to me, this can be, it could have been easily, not necessarily easy, but it could have been solved a long time ago. And I think that some of the pushback is religious also, like people thinking that, oh, drugs are just the devil and stuff like this. To me, it's a lot of like conservative problems, like people with conservative viewpoints on stuff. But to me, it's like, I think we both agree that basically we don't think that it matters what you consume in your body, as long as you're not hurting other people. Even if it's destructive for yourself, that's your choice. As long as you give the information out there, like we do the science, we do the analyses, we say, okay, this drug is dangerous in this dosage, you should only take it this amount of time, blah, blah, blah. And depending on if you're already an addict or your life history, maybe you should stay away from this or that.
Yeah, and I think that would also help a lot of people then really come out and say, yeah, I have a problem. If you keep it illegal, most people don't be like, okay, realizing that they have a problem because it's illegal, and then you don't want to talk about that, and maybe you don't want to admit that you have a problem to people because they think, oh man, he's doing crime, or he's like a bad person, like he's the devil, like you said, because he's taking drugs. If you make it legal, also people may come out of their like hiding and say, yeah, I have a problem, please help me, and not be afraid that there are any consequences than getting into jail or something. And also, I think with the destructive part, when you make it legal and the government takes control of selling it, you could also improve in quotations, improve the drugs by not like putting some shit in it, like battery acid or something, so to maximize your profit.
I think that happened in New York, didn't it? There's something that happened in New York where all of a sudden, like, where I heard about it that somewhere in New York they were lacing something with something that was like something else that was like actually leading to like a lot of overdoses.
Yeah, I think what I heard is like most of the people that die from drugs, they don't die of an overdose, because most of the regular users know their dosages, but there's something in there that is just toxic or deadly, and then you die because of that, because they didn't tell you that this is in it to maximize their profit. So if you make it legal, then you have
you can regulate it a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Get the pure
and prevent
product.
People from.
Yeah,
but exactly. But the problem is, I think the problem one is that government, like, I think the problem with like that, like, so I mean, we agree on that stance. You should be able to do what you want, right?
Yeah.
I think as long as you don't hurt other people and you know the information and you try to be as safe as possible. I think the problem, the hurdle that that anyone would have in trying to do this, right? I think number one is getting people to listen to the arguments that you have, right? When you try to get governments to listen to facts and data and what we have and reasoning, for some reason they don't listen. I don't understand.
Yeah,
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think we talked about this. I think that's also the generational change that's gonna happen. I think we talked about this before.
But I don't even think that's generational. I think what I'm saying is like this, right? Like I believe like this. Like say for example, me and you, right? We care about facts and data and analysis and science and whatever like that. We care, and rationality. Right? Anyone who cares about kind of things like that, right? Even, I feel like if you keep that mindset, even when I'm 50, right? If I see that the evidence points to this, I may have my biases, but I would have, like, for me, the rationality and the choice and what the science says and what the evidence points to would kind of compel me to say, listen, I was wrong, or the way we've been doing it is wrong. Right, so I don't think that's what I'm saying is I don't think that's I mean, some of it may be generational, but I'm saying, like, if we equip as many people as possible with the mindset to, like, actually just care about what the data says.
Yeah, but I think that wasn't the case before. A lot of people, that wasn't the main point. It was how a lot of religious stuff and like conservative stuff, and I think that is generational, that back in this time drugs were so bad and whatever, and they didn't care about the facts, and they still don't because of their upbringing. But I think as more and more young people transition to like an older age and replace these people, and the new people care about the facts, then I think it's gonna change something. But with like the older generation, I don't think that's gonna change anything.
Yeah, so it's like, so that's like the main problem, is like getting people to actually listen to the facts.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you get over that hurdle, then you gotta think about, okay, well, if we place laws in, how will we have the right structure for the laws and things like that, then that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's like.
And then it's implementing it, which is a whole nother conversation. But we can't even get this fucking thing to be accepted. Like go, even with climate change, right? Not to go off on a tangent, but even with climate change, we can't even get fucking politicians to be like, oh yeah, it's real. And it's like, that's why I just, like, don't even get me started. That's why I just think we're fucked, man. But anyway.
But do you think that in the near future that's gonna change? I think that, like, weed, maybe. I could think about, like, maybe the next 10 to 15 years, we could be getting way more legal all over the world. But the other drugs, I don't. In the near future, or even, like, my lifetime, I don't know if there's something change. I don't know. I don't see it. Because
I hope
still,
so.
although
Or we just move to Mars, man. For real. Elon Musk, man, you gotta get us over there.
Yeah,
Let
if the same people are on Mars, nothing's gonna change.
No. This is an idea that I know is kind of radical, but this is kind of something that I've always. This is when our podcast. This is when our podcast gets canceled. But this is an idea that I know is radical, but this is what I feel, right? Segregation is not necessarily always a bad thing, right? The way it was used in the States was obviously bad. But for example, if say for example, you don't believe in climate change and I do. And you're like, oh, I say you should stop with the pollution. You're like, fuck that. I'm going to pollute the world however much I want. I'm going to do whatever, oil and all that shit, whatever, right? Then I should be like, I should have the freedom to be like, you know what? I'm going to go to another planet where we're not going to fuck it up. In my opinion, you could do what you want here on Earth, and then I'll do what I believe is necessary on Mars, and all the people kind of move. Right? Like, same with people who want to do wars and people who want to have conflict. Like, when countries go to war,
I wouldn't call that segregation. Segregation is more like
you're segregating.
You're separating them. But segregation is more like enforced separation.
I get that. I understand that. But I'm just talking about in the general definition to segregating things.
Okay.
You can call it separation, but okay, fine. We could just call it separation. Like, but you know what I mean? That's a cute difference. But you know what I'm saying? What's the difference really in the concept, right? Like, I understand segregation has. I definitely understand that segregation has a bad history, right? I would
define it as like enforced separation, not that you voluntarily separate from other people.
Well, what I mean is like the only enforced part would be like that we should be able to build structures where people can leave and go away. Right? Like, so for example, if I really want to, like, leave this planet because I believe it's fucked, like, I should, like, me and the people who want to do this should have the resources to do it. Like, we shouldn't be held back by people who think the opposite.
Yeah.
Because it's not affecting them. Right? If you give me more resources to move to Mars, right, it's not necessarily affecting you because you're not trying to really move into space. You're trying to stay here. So why the fuck does it matter what I do with my spaceships? Right, you get what I'm saying?
I get what I'm saying.
There should be laws in place to prevent people from fucking that up. That's the only type of enforcement or segregation part. Like there would be enforced, right? Like if you want to be like even when countries go to war, right? Most of the people who live in the country don't really probably give a shit, right? So they kind of like are swayed either way, but they're not like necessarily like so mad that they're willing to fight. Right.
And they're probably happy if they don't have to fight.
Right, exactly. So we wage. So you should put all the people who want to have war, put them in one fucking country, let them blow each other up if they want. And then, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you should, like, I should not have to be in the middle of that shit.
The thing is, the people that want to fight are like probably like the generals and the higher military stuff, and like the normal soldier who wants to fight.
Guess what? Let them go. Let them fight. Let them fight. If you want to do that, leave me the fuck out of it.
Oh, man.
Like, you know what I'm saying? That's so for me, that even falls into the drug thing, right? If you don't want to do it, fine. You go to your place where it's drug free, whatever like that. And if another person wants to do it, it's not bothering you, right? It's not bothering you. It's the same thing about people who, are homophobic. Why do you care about who another person's fucking? I don't understand. Yeah. Why does it matter? Like, to you?
Yeah, true.
Right? So, yeah. So I think, so that's my whole rundown of why segregation may not necessarily, in every case, be a problem. But we can call it separation if that makes you feel better, Em.
Yeah, it does. Okay, I think we made some valid points. Let's move on to the second topic, which was, does the prestige of your school matter, and especially in your future career path? So, as you're a Cambridge student, this is right up your alley. So, do you think that the prestige of the school does matter?
Kind of yes and no. And what I mean by that, yes, in the sense that practically it does because people still care about the name. But as far as like, do I think that the research that we do here, well, okay, like you could do really great research anywhere, is what I'm saying, even if you're at a very small school, right? Or even if you're at a school that doesn't have a really big name. Just because like, for example, that I'm at Cambridge doesn't mean that everything I'm gonna put out or everyone puts out, something that anything puts out here in Cambridge is all of a sudden like awesome, right? There's people that do research in Cambridge that I'm pretty sure it's pretty shit, right? Like, no, I mean, cause you can't, you can't guarantee that everything's gonna be a hit, right? I think that once you get to a certain level, it really stops mattering, right? Because like when you're in grad school, you're really submitting to journals, you're really doing your own research, which you have to read papers from other people and who are at places like Cambridge and Harvard and all these things, right? So you're understanding what these people who are doing top-notch research are doing, right? You're reading the same thing. You're learning the same techniques, especially if it's like statistical stuff, right? The only way that I would say that it would matter is like maybe like equipment, like depending on what field you are. Maybe if you're doing like, if you don't have an MRI machine or if you don't have, like it's basically like equipment and resources. But as far as like the quality of the research you do, I don't think it matters anymore because, for example, the internet is great. You can collaborate with anyone. Like even if you don't have the resources, you could collaborate with someone. Like I went to University of Scranton, which is a smaller school, right? We don't have a MRI machine. We didn't have we had nice resources for being a small school, but we didn't have like all these giant labs and all this, amazing state of the art equipment all the time, right? But say, for example, if I was at Scranton and I collaborate with someone who was at Harvard and they had the equipment, but I helped analyze the data. I helped design the experiment, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I went to Harvard a little every now and then to do it, like to facilitate, like do the experiments as well. And then at the end, you have a paper that's in Nature, right? Or a big journal. And it's just a collaboration. And collaborations are becoming more and more commonplace because the questions that we're asking are more and more complex. So I don't think it really matters anymore because you find smart people anywhere, everywhere I've been. And even when I have conversations with people who aren't from Cambridge or when I was in Scranton, people that were from MIT or from Harvard or from all these different big name schools, I realized that they were no smarter than me. I was no smarter than them. You have smart people everywhere, right? It's really about your motivation and your drive. And you can do the same shit that everyone else can do. I think the only part where it matters, like I said, is because the world still gives a shit, right? That's where it matters because the world still gives a shit. So if they say you're studying in Regensburg and say you got your PhD from Regensburg and I got my PhD at Cambridge, and even if we did somewhat similar things, right? I believe that they would be a little bit biased to say, oh, University of Cambridge.
Yeah, I think, does it help? Yes, but just because you come from a more prestige school doesn't mean that you're smarter than everybody else who's at different universities that may not be as prestigious as yours. Just because they didn't go to it, maybe they didn't care about the name, they just wanted to stay close to their family, or they didn't want to go abroad if like a prestigious school is more prestigious school is outside of their country. I don't think that necessarily you're smarter just because you go to Cambridge, Harvard, or whatever. Maybe they just didn't want to apply because they didn't give a shit about that, and they liked the people that were at their own university, and they liked the fields of study they did at their university. So I think it most definitely helps, I would say, if you apply for a job and both have identical backgrounds, identical research they've done, but one did it at Cambridge and one did it, for example, in, I don't know, Scranton, Regensburg, wherever. I think the one from Cambridge would be preferred just because of the name of it. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that he's more suited for the job just because he got into Cambridge.
Right. And I think that even sometimes going to a less prestigious school is actually good for you because, like, for example, I went to Scranton, which is, it's a really good school, but it's not like, it's not considered at Harvard or MIT or Princeton or anything. And I was able to stand out very easily, right? So if I'm smart, and not saying that everyone else wasn't, right? Because there were a lot of brilliant people there. But if you're smart, you kind of stick out more in a school that doesn't have as big of a name, as opposed to what if, like, I went to a Harvard where, quote unquote, which is not always the case, that everyone is considered to be brilliant and smart, right? You kind of can get lost in this sea of smart people, and it could be more difficult to differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
Which then, yeah, you graduated from Harvard, but you're kind of like everyone else that graduated from Harvard. And whereas opposed to, like, oh, if you came from Scranton and you were able to had more attention, you were able to smaller classrooms, more time with the faculty, so you're able to actually learn more, right? I think a lot of people who even went to Scranton or Regensburg, if they have that more attention, they're actually even more mature, even better equipped than people who go to a really big university because they've been able to do things. If you go to, like, a big school, like a big name school, it's hard for you to even get into someone's lab, right? Let alone anything. So in a way, it could actually be a plus for you because you could actually publish more papers, you could have more research experience.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how it is in Cambridge or Harvard, or if you're an undergrad and you're not doing a PhD, how easily you can get into labs and actually, like, get into contact with researchers, with professors and anything, because at my school you have, like, regular contact with your professor or your supervisor as soon as you get in the lab. So I don't know how that is in, like, other schools, but mine is rather, well, not small, but compared to other, it's not as prestigious. But you get a lot of attention at least as soon as you have your masters, as soon as the bulk of people is gone that may study this only because they don't know what they want to do in life or whatever. As soon as you get in your masters, you really get a lot of attention, not only by students from higher grades, but from professors and from supervisors that really do regular and daily research. So I think that could be also a plus. I don't know how that is in Cambridge, if it's the same way or in other prestigious schools.
Well, for me, I mean, I have easy contact with my supervisor.
Yeah, but you're doing a PhD, of course, that then is necessary. But imagine if you're undergraduate and you're doing, I don't know, first time you're in the lab or something. Is really the professor gonna be like and talk to you, or rather like research assistants, like students doing research assistants?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think in my unit, at least, I haven't seen any undergrads here at all. I don't know necessarily that they can't come, like, you know what I mean? They just could, like, just be really busy.
Yeah.
With schoolwork and stuff, right? So, but the point of the matter is, like, prestige doesn't always matter, right? It makes you look good on paper, but it could really work against you. Because if I'm from Cambridge and my PhD is, like, complete shit, then it's like, really? You just completely failed having, like, that stimulus of Cambridge, right? Like, It didn't really help you at all. But I don't know. I think there's pluses and minuses in both, but I think no matter what, you should not let it discourage you. So if you don't go to a big name school, just work hard and try to stand out. And if you're good, I think the universe has a way of finding people that are special.
I think that's the most important thing. Working hard, and it doesn't matter where you come from. As long as you work hard, you're gonna find your path and be successful in it.
And opportunities are taken; they're not given. You could be offered something, but you got to take it. If you can't expect things to come to you, right? And I think if it really sucks that, like, on paper, a lot of times it does seem to matter, but in reality, I think that, like, everyone in my lab, or at least in my PhD group, come from broadly different schools. Some people have went to Cambridge undergrad, some people haven't. Some people went to other good schools in England. Other ones went to kind of like normal schools like me. Like you get a very big variety of backgrounds. So I think, it's starting to change. I think where it doesn't matter as much, and that's good thing that is luckily due to the internet and things like collaboration. You need more people to do stuff. And so I think the world is moving more into, who really cares about the name? It matters about what you do.
Yeah.
So, and I guess with that, we could wrap that.
Yeah. So let's continue with our last topic, which was, what do we think are one of the biggest challenges that our species faces today and in the future? So do you want to start, or should I start with what I think are very important we have to solve for us to continue basically as a species?
You can go first.
Okay, so like you mentioned before, I think one of the biggest problems is of course climate change, because you can already see the impact it has, and I don't want to know how it's going to be in 50 years if we don't change anything, with more and more natural catastrophes. And then you also have to think about increasing amounts of deserts, which then lead of course to famine and droughts and more people starving, and the people that can't get any food or water anymore moving to better still livable places like Europe or something. And then you have this mass amount of people in the small area, and then there are gonna be wars and fights over food and water. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, and I think a lot of people don't give that much attention, and they just think, well, whatever, that's the problem of the future generations. But I think now really is the time we have to start thinking about climate change and start making changes. Otherwise, even in our lifetime, we're gonna be highly affected. So that's one thing. Then together with this, I also think that a big problem is the increasing amount of people just around the world. So I don't know how many billion people are there right now?
Almost 8.
7?
I think it's almost. I think it's definitely over 7, but I think it's over
8 or something.
Yeah, it's close to 8 billion. So, it's close to 8 billion.
Yeah. So I think just how you gonna feed all these people? Where are those people all gonna live? And also with that more and more inequality, of course, like we already see it today, these big billionaires like Jeff Bezos that has 100 billion, 105 billion, something like that.
I think it went up. I think he has 112 billion now.
Well, what is 7 billions, to be honest?
To him, yeah. It's
exactly. So,
you give me 7 billion, man, you changed my motherfucking life, man. Yeah, I'm chilling.
Exactly. So this a lot of the places where more and more people are born, and also the poor people, and so there's gonna be increased inequality. Like I said, how we gonna feed all these people, and then of course our impact on our Earth again, coming back to climate change. So I think that's another big problem. And yeah, I think these are 2 big problems. So what points do you have?
So I think for me, I think there's 2 that I think are there's probably more, but 2 at least that I would say are, for me, some of the roots, right? Even under what you've said, is things like climate change and population, population control, not control, but we don't want to start we don't want to start exterminating people. But
no, we did this before. This was not a good idea.
Yeah, that sounded really bad. But one thing is how we understand information, man. And it comes back to what we talked about before, right? Facts and evidence, right? I think a lot of our problems would be so much easier to solve if we could agree at least on general facts that things are happening. It's how people, critical thinking skills, it's how people analyze stuff and look at the world and how they, like, just their mindset and their viewpoint and the way that they've been educated, right? Like, to me, that's the thing that scares me. It's like, it's because these problems can't even be addressed if the people who are empowered to stop these things, or to the ones that can, help make them better, aren't listening because they're stuck in their own opinion. Right? To me, it's like in a lot of cases, you have clear evidence or clear things that this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a big problem, this is a huge problem, we should do this. And then you get from the ones who could actually make change saying, no, I don't really think so. Why? Because it's not going to help them money-wise or blah, blah, blah. So I would say one is how we process information and how people think critically. And then two is like just, like, I think one of my just general principles, right, that I think a lot of people should try to strive is just don't be a dick.
That's
right?
one of
like,
the biggest challenges. Not
right,
be a
it's
dick.
just like, because people just, sometimes it's just dicks. And it's like, you just sit there and you're like, oh, I could do this nice thing for you, but it's not gonna, like, benefit me financially. Or for example, like, okay, say I'm making, say I'm a billionaire, right? And I have $10 billion, and I have the opportunity to make 20, all of a sudden I can make 10 more billion, right? And if I exploit people, blah, blah, blah. But if I do the right thing, and I care about people and not try to, like, fuck everyone over, maybe I make 500 million. Why is 500 million so goddamn bad? I don't understand, like, why people are so greedy that way. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, people will go the extra mile to fuck people over to get that maximum amount of profit they can. When even if, say, all these companies were ethically sound, right? Like, say, like, Nike didn't go to underdeveloped countries and exploit them for labor and stuff like that, and all these other companies didn't do all these shortcuts and exploit this one and that one and cut these budgets or something like that in order for them to get the most money. They act like they would not be rich. Y'all would still be rich. And y'all would still have more...
7 billion.
Right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Is it really that worth it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Is it really that worth it? Like, if I could say, for me, if like, I think Dave Chappelle, his interview he did, it was, to me, it was an amazing, like, thing that he said. Where he said, cause, he had the Chappelle show and then he kind of, like, moved and he left to go to South Africa. Yeah. Right? And it was kind of like, I mean, he's back now, of course, but, like, it was a big thing where they offered him, like, $40 or $50 million to, like, cause it was a very, very popular show.
Yeah.
And he ran away from it all. Right? Have you heard about this?
Yeah. And then he got the Netflix.
Right. So then he came back and obviously he's making a lot more money now, but it was very, like, people asked, why did you leave? Like, you were at the height of your, like, kind of your popularity, or offering you all this money. And he said the crazy thing, it was all about control. And he said, like, for example, he said that they wanted to, like, control kind of, like, how he would be presented, his content or stuff like that. Like, he felt like he was getting pressured to conform to a certain way.
Yeah.
And he said, it was really crazy. He said, what's the difference between $40 million and $10 million besides that one is 40 million and one's 10? He said, because say I had $10 million and my friend has $40 million. We're at the same parties. We go to the same events. We can all buy the same clothes.
Yeah.
Pillows don't cost more when you met 40 million as opposed to 10 million. Pillows still cost the same. Food still costs the same.
Yeah.
He said, quality of life, there is no difference between having 40 million and having $10 million. And I feel like that's the same thing with, like, people just sometimes, in this case, financially being dicks, right? There's no difference between me making 10 billion and me making 500 million.
Yeah.
There's really no qualitative difference. So why does it matter?
Because people are greedy.
Yeah.
People are greedy.
And to me, it's just sad. It's just like fucked up. Like, you know what I mean? And it makes me, like, really, annoyed at the world, right? And I think that a lot of these problems would be solved if people just like I said, stop being a dick, don't be an asshole. And it's not that you have to do everything for people, right? But don't go out of your way to hurt people, if that makes sense, right? Like if you're just gonna kind of stay in your own lane and not really, influence anyone either way, I mean, I think you should try to help people. But if you're gonna do the least you could do is not hurt people and not try to bring them down, right? To me, that's what bothers me. It's like, why? Because the benefits that you think you're gonna get, like, one, they won't make you happier. Like, we've seen this, especially when it comes to money. And two, when you die, you can't take the money with you.
Exactly, yeah.
So what the fuck? What's the point? And it's all about greed and power and all that stuff. So I would kind of take those, like, if I could do, I would be like those problems, like people who are just being a dick and assholes for no reason, and who are being obsessed with power and money and status, and being in individualism, right? So those are kind of like my big issues, because I think that those kind of undermine a lot of the issues that we have and why we haven't solved them yet, because it's the fundamental it's like the way fundamental nature of how we operate.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. What I was thinking now is just the big, like, this corrupting influence of money on basically everything. When I think about it, regarding climate change, why don't people do more about that? Why don't politicians do more about that? Well, they get money from, like, the oil companies in the States, for example. They don't give a fuck about the environment if they get their millions on their bank accounts. Or in Germany here with the diesel scandal, we have, of course, this big company VW that also has lobbyists who then influence the politicians, and they say, like, you can have bigger or stronger regulation on us because then we have to get people fired, and then, of course, this is not good for you, and blah blah blah. Here again, money, because they have this big power and influence because of their money, it helps them basically cheat the environment. And also exploiting people, for example, with Amazon. Well, while he has 105, 112, whatever it is, billions, his employees probably don't make a living wage, and they have, like, this shit life where they have to probably work, like, overtime, and they don't have enough money to live. So I think, like, money, the corrupting influence of money, is also a really, really big problem that we have to face, but I don't see how that's ever gonna change. I don't.
Right, because you can't really attack. I think you could try to attack the problems themselves, like things like climate change or even like AI, or like, artificial intelligence going bad, or plastic, consumption or something. You could attack those problems at surface, but I think it's much more effective because these problems there's a difference between local and systemic problems. Like, local problems, you can kind of like patch up in a way because they're local. They're very small. They're more contained. Systemic problems are rooted in the systems that they're in, right? Like even like, for example, in criminal justice, right? You have to systemically change systemic problems. And yeah, you could do local things and you can affect them locally, but if the system is fundamentally wrong, you have to focus on that, because no matter how much patchwork you do, it's still just patchwork. It's still going to bleed somewhere. It's
like putting a bandage on a flesh wound. You may reduce the bleeding, but most of the bleeding still keeps going. So yeah, you're right.
Right. So I think that's what it is. We have to find the roots of these problems and do it. So I think if those are our biggest challenges, getting humans to be better than we are now.
Yeah, and it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be very, very hard.
Because humans, we just have to be better. Like, we just have to be better. But how we be better and whether we can be better before it's too late, that's what worries me.
Yeah.
Right. Can we be better? And if we can, will we be better in enough time?
Yeah.
For it to matter. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, and
or die.
die. I don't know.
You was about to say I don't care.
I care a lot, and I feel sad for the future generations that have to deal with the shit we are now causing. If it continues with the shit, I don't know how the world's gonna be in like 100, 200 years. I don't know what people have to go through then, but maybe it's gonna be better. I don't know. The future is uncertain. Let's leave it with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, I guess we can end, right?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for listening, and we're gonna see you the next time.